We are screwing our children up. The snowball is rolling down the hill. 64% of young men under 30 are not currently active in the dating world. Only 32% of the same age group women are not active. Well, where is that other 30% or so? There's only two answers. Women are dating women, or they're dating the same guy. And that's usually what's happening. Alpha males are particularly known for having multiple mates, 8 women to every male. That was natural at that point in time. That is when monogamy was created. I think birth control is the death of it, and that we're starting to go in the opposite direction.
But then that's my question. Do you think that this is a part of the natural evolution? Do you think we're going?
I hope not, because you're going to see an increase in male violence against women as this go on. We're going to become a relationship or loveless society. That is just how it is.
Welcome back, episode 51 of POG. We have a very special guest back with you today. We got some great feedback a few months ago on attachment styles that we did with Chris Evensen. We brought him back in today. We're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to be specifically talking about avoidant attachment style. So Chris, thank you for coming back.
No, thank you guys for having me back. I appreciate it. Last time we got together, we had a very powerful conversation, and the results are showing that people are attentive to what we were talking about. So let's do it again.
Yeah. So first question we have for you is, can you explain a little bit more on what an avoidant attachment style is and how it could develop in a childhood?
Yeah, let's go back to the very beginning. Avoidants are developed through childhood. The first 5 years of their life, they do not have an emotional connection typically to their mother. There is some sort of disconnect between the mother and the child where they're not feeling they're getting the emotional support that they desire and need.
So when you look at an avoidant, how can one look at themselves and pick themselves out as an avoidant?
It's a great question. They have to look at their tendencies. Avoidants have very distinct characteristics and traits. They do the same thing over and over again. Today, we're going to cover the relationship death wheel in a lot more great detail. I mentioned in the last video. Avoidants go through 8 stages of a relationship. The first stage of the relationship is when they're feeling lonely, they're seeking relationship, they want companionship, they truly want deep love, long-lasting relationships. Stage 2, they now start seeking that person. They start going out, dating, looking for somebody to connect with. The interesting part about avoidance is they kind of lean into a relationship slowly. The first 30 to 60 days, they're kind of feeling out as, are you the right partner for me? Because they are seeking that relationship. If after the first 30 to 60 days, they're comfortable, that is when the love bombing begins. Mm-hmm. And now you're going to see love attachment at a very high level. As I was sharing with you earlier, they write a love story. Avoidants are known for it. And it all happens during the honeymoon stage of the relationship. They're receiving the dopamine that they want from the relationship. They thrive off of dopamine. We'll cover the hormonal part in a few minutes. They start receiving the dopamine, they're feeling good, the love bombing begins. They continue to do that for an extended period of time during the honeymoon stage.
So when you look at, because I thought about this when we went into avoidance, I think there's an avoidance inside the relationship, but I want to know about avoidance outside of relationships because in the current climate that we live in, I think it's easier for people that might be in an avoidant attachment style to just omit all relationship building in that category. So for instance, not dating, just feeling more so as it's just going to come to them. And we live in a market now, especially with dating apps and stuff like that. If you're not constantly participating in the dating market, years can go by. Like you can snap your finger and next thing you know, like 5 years went by and you haven't really developed any of this. Can you explain what it looks like for an avoidant, for people that are looking for, assessing themselves outside of a relationship? What does that look like when they're...
Well, avoidants have the same pattern over and over. They always seek relationship. They desire it more. The dismissive avoidant, let me start there. There's 2 different types of avoidance. You have a fearful avoidant, represents about 5% of our population. Then you have the dismissive avoidant, who we're going to focus on today. They represent about 30% of our population. They're the second largest population we have. Secures are the largest, approximate around 40%. Avoidants always seek relationship. That's why they're known for their monkey branching, specifically when they're young. They will swing from relationship to relationship. There are multiple different hormones involved in relationship. Some of the hormones that are involved in relationship are oxytocin, cortisol, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. Oxytocin is the hormone that an avoidant doesn't process correctly. Avoidants live off of one hormone, dopamine. Well, actually two, cortisol and dopamine. The way they regulate their cortisols is by the use of dopamine because they do not process oxytocin correctly. Oxytocin is what creates GABA. GABA is what regulates your cortisols. If your cortisols are not regulated, you're going to be a high-stress individual. You'll notice with avoidance, they're usually very high-stress individuals. They thrive on it. The way they control their stress levels is through dopamine. The way they get their dopamine is through the initiation of relationships. That's why you'll find that an avoidant will monkey branch from relationship to relationship. They'll go from one relationship, get the dopamine fix that they're looking for. Avoidance can look like two different things. One, a narcissist, which they are not, and two, an addict, which they are not. They do have addictive personalities, but their addiction is more to dopamine to regulate their cortisols. They're trying to de-stress. That's why avoidants tend to be more sexually active people, because they receive dopamine and it relieves their stress from them. So there is a hormonal component to attachment style, specifically with the avoidant. And because they don't process oxytocin correctly, they're not capable of feeling love. They don't understand what that feels like. To an avoidant, love means pain. To an avoidant, closeness means pain. Vulnerability means pain. Everything that we would normally get, a secure or another style would get from a relationship, an avoidant feels is painful. That's why they're known for situationships. They'll get into short-term relationships, obtaining the things they need from it. It feels very transactional. And then once they're not obtaining what they want from that relationship, the dopamine they're seeking, they'll go someplace else and seek it from someone else.
When you look at the avoidant attachment style, how does that in your childhood manifest? So what does that look like? Somebody, if they're trying to assess themselves again, what would be like a classic example of somebody's in their childhood that has an avoidant personality?
Well, the way they develop an avoidant personality is through their relationship typically with their mother. If there is not a solid emotional connection between a mother and child, depending upon what that looks like, if the mother is an avoidant, they will pass that avoidancy on. You asked me a while back in a private conversation what my goal was. My goal is to create awareness that causes action. Action without awareness is useless. And that's where we're at now. People are becoming more and more aware of this topic. People like Tony Robbins are now talking about it. I was quite surprised to see that. Some of your big names, Chris Evensen, Joe Rogan, they're all getting into this whole concept of relationships and attachment because it is an epidemic that we're having in our country.
Do you think that, like with social media technology, social media, dating apps, is this only going to get worse? Like more and more people are going to become like that avoidant attachment style due to the rise of the technology and everything staying on the phone?
Also with that, double clicking on that, when you have social media, dating apps, whatever, if you're explaining avoidant as the person that likes to swing from branch to branch, social media gives you a plethora of options, which 20 years ago, you didn't know that that existed.
It fuels them, is what it does. It fuels them. It gives them an opportunity to use their avoidancy more. They can actually connect and get dopamine even from social media. I like that person. It makes me feel good.
And I think it becomes even easier with the dating apps because like some of our friends, maybe sometimes me, like you can go on a dating, like go on say a Hinge, right? Dating profile. And so I know like Marco said this to us when we did the podcast with him. He'll just like swipe through. All he needs is to know that he matched with that person. Then it's just bored. Then it's like, I'm good.
They're
like it's like
dopamine.
It's like playing Hot or Not. You get the dopamine from it. Like, oh, I matched with that girl, and it's like, oh, I'm good now.
And
like
what's scary about dating apps is women swipe right 3% of the time, and men swipe right about 75% of the time.
That's a crazy stat.
It is, and that's continuing. You're seeing a rise in avoidant women now across the world. Which I think is very dangerous. I think we can all agree men operate out of logic initially, and women operate out of emotion. When you combine avoidancy with emotions, you're designing a recipe for disaster.
How so?
Well, avoidance can look very much like a narcissist. Because of our last video, I've picked up quite a few consulting clients now regarding relationship, more of them. Most of them have been avoidance. What I'm learning about it, just from my own personal experiences, is that between the age of 40 and 50, avoidants usually start looking in the mirror. For the first 20 years of their dating life, they don't realize what's going on. They're always blaming the other person. Talk to an avoidant, ask them about their relationships. They usually have many of them over the first 20 years of their life. Most of them do not last more than 2 years. They'll have several that are lasting 6 or 8 months. That's that monkey branching. They're going from relationship to relationship. They get into their 40s at some point, and then loneliness sets in. They start to look in the mirror and say, okay, maybe it's not them, maybe it's me. When you talk to that avoidant and you ask them to describe their relationships, they always blame the other person for the demise of that relationship. And the reason that happens is they fabricate their story. An avoidant in the honeymoon stage, like I said, will write the love story. As soon as they trigger, and anything can trigger them, you can talk to them about, they can trigger upon asking them out on a date. So you never know when an avoidant is going to trigger. The one thing you do know is they are going to trigger. It's just a matter of when. When they trigger, they rewrite the love story. Now they start flaw finding. They're looking for the negatives that are happening in the relationship. Phase 2 is when they're looking for their relationship, right? Phase 1, I seek somebody. I want to have companionship. Phase 2 is when they go out and find that companion. Now I found the love of my life. Phase 3 is when everything starts going wrong. They trigger and they start feeling like something is wrong within that relationship. They don't know what that is. They can't identify it, so they have to fabricate it. I have a bad feeling. This is not working for me. There's something wrong in this relationship. So now I have to find out what it is. The problem is they can't find it because there really is nothing wrong in the relationship. It's internal. It's in their subconscious. So now they write their own story. They start looking at all the flaw finding. This person's doing this. You'll find it's very transactional. You didn't do this little thing for me. You didn't do that. Avoidants are the king of suppression. They're great at suppressing their emotions. They trigger, they rewrite the love story, then they exit the relationship. I don't know if anyone here has ever dated an avoidant. I have. They erase you, basically. They wake up one day, and they pull the rug right out from underneath you. You have to remember, this whole time that they have these ill feelings, they're never communicating that. They're still love bombing you. So you think everything is fine. They are internally, subconsciously, are thinking nothing is good about this relationship and I need to find a way to get out of it. They're not communicating that with you. All of a sudden, they pull the rug out from underneath you. You sit there and go, what just happened? They're already exited the relationship. They exited the relationship mentally before they ever pulled the rug out from underneath you. Now the erasing takes place. They delete you on all social media accounts. They block you everywhere. Most avoidants will try to leave one channel of communication open with you. The reason they do that is because they know they're inflicting pain on you. They've done it multiple times now. They know what the other person is going to react. They want to see how you're going to react.
It's a game.
It's a game to them. And they don't, again, understand this is not intentional. I want to reiterate that. People with an insecure attachment style are not bad people. They have just programmed themselves early on in youth to create protective mechanisms that cause them to do the things they do. An avoidant creates a protective mechanism that says to them, no one can take care of me other than me. They don't trust anyone. Directly opposite of an anxious. An anxious trusts everyone but themselves. That is why an avoidant cannot connect properly to another person. They thrive off the honeymoon stage. They're getting their dopamine. Now the intimacy stage comes. Honeymoon stages don't last forever. Now you're going into what we would consider a deeper, loving relationship. That will trigger them. They're not feeling good about that. I have to start looking at why I'm not feeling good. I can't find the why I'm not feeling good. Now I have to create the why and tell myself a story. And then what they do is they disengage the relationship. They erase you from existence. And the reason they're doing that is not to hurt you. They're doing it to protect themselves. You always have to look at the motive of somebody. That is the key difference between a narcissist and an avoidant, and why an avoidant is not a narcissist. A narcissist is trying to do one thing, control you. An avoidant is trying to control themselves and the environment in which their relationship stands with it, if that makes sense.
So if, for someone watching, if they're like, Chris, like everything you just explained, that's my girlfriend, what do you do?
That's a great question. That's a very good question. First and foremost, it's a dangerous question as well. And the reason for that is if you bring this up to an avoidant that they're doing these things, you could trigger them. So you actually have to go in and soft sell them on it and start asking questions. You don't seem right. Is everything okay? You have to compliment them. You have to tell them you appreciate them. If you're not feeding their dopamine, they're going to disconnect. So you have to change the way you think and the way you present information. Because if you present it and go right at them and say, look, there's a problem going on, you're going to trigger them. They're going to leave the relationship, no doubt about it.
So basically, just run, leave.
Well, that's a great question again, too. I would recommend to anyone that is dating an avoidant that does not have awareness of their avoidancy to be very, very cautious. Here's one thing I can guarantee you. You cannot rely on an avoidant within a relationship, period, the end.
So we talked about it kind of in terms of like a romantic relationship. What about an avoidant attachment in terms like a friendship or even at work?
They're great friends, usually. They have a lot of friendships. That's one of the ways they get their dopamine. The reason they thrive in friendship is because they don't have to commit to it. There's no love involved. And they can receive dopamine through that friendship. What you'll notice, though, they're what I call butterflies. They'll bounce from a group of friends to another group of friends to another group of friends. And they'll continue that circle over and over again. The reason they do that is they come and they hang out with Mike for a month or two. You're giving them dopamine. Now it's starting to wear off. Okay, Mike's not giving me what I need. Now I'm going to go hang out with Jamie. Jamie's now giving me my dopamine. Now that wears off after a period of time. Now I'm going to go over here and get my dopamine. Once they get their dopamine from Ryan, now they come back to Mike. They haven't seen Mike in a while. Wow, I like you again, Mike. You're giving me dopamine. And you'll find they kind of bounce within that circle, and that allows them never to commit. There's no long-term commitment to that. That's not deep, long-lasting relationship. One of the unique things that an avoidant does when they rewrite the script on your relationship, they recruit their friends as enablers. They'll go and tell that story that's fabricated to all of their friends so they get emotional support.
Yeah.
And now they'll turn around and their friends will become the enablers to their avoidance. And now their friends will start attacking the mate as well as the avoidant attacking the mate because they all go on attack.
With that, the thing that I see a lot, and I can usually tell, like, depending on, now that I have full context of this, the transition from relationship to relationship. What you're explaining to me is avoidants need that. They need that quick fix. So somebody getting out of a 6 to 8 month relationship, a year relationship, a 2-year relationship, if they're an avoidant and you are maybe a secure or an anxious or somebody that's not an avoidant, how can you pick them out of a crowd when you're on the dating scene?
They're very distinct patterns. They're going to pronounce their independence typically. Again, I recommend people study the attachment theory, read the book Attached, specifically on a specific one of the insecures if you're dating an avoidant, and learn their patterns. Avoidants have very, very distinct patterns. Going back to that relationship wheel. First phase, they're looking for relationships. Second phase, they find it. Third phase, something is wrong with my relationship. That is when they rewrite the story and they create the problems within the relationship. They start believing them. They need to because they're feeling pain. Then they go into the fourth stage, which is they've made the decision. They haven't left it yet, but they've made the decision. Now they start plotting how they're going to do so, and they start recruiting their friends at that point. They start telling this false story to their friends. Their friends start supporting them emotionally. You need to leave that person, right? They're seeking validation. Everyone seeks validation. Doesn't matter what attachment style you are. You're going to seek validation. They're seeking it from their friends who have now believed this fabricated story, and they start promoting them to leave the relationship. It gives them the courage to do so. Stage 5, they actually leave the relationship, and that's when they erase you. Now you do not exist. They'll usually leave one axis of communication open because they have guilt. They know they're inflicting pain on somebody. They've done it before. They want to see how you react. The best reaction anyone can have to that type of situation is go no contact immediately. If you want to flip the script on an avoidant, do exactly what they're doing. Go no contact. If you go no contact, you'll actually confuse them. Now, if they get to stage 6, that's their exuberant stage. That's when they've officially left the relationship and they're feeling exuberant. They're feeling very happy. I got away. I've now got my independence back. I'm self-regulating. The challenge with avoidance is they can only auto-regulate. They feel they are the only ones that can take care of their emotions. They do not know how to co-regulate. To be in a successful relationship, both parties need to learn how to co-regulate.
Good.
So when you look at, like you talked about female, male differences, an avoidant can go 20 years, relationship to relationship to relationship. Not to piss people off, but like for a woman, your highest value in a dating marketplace is usually like when you can have kids.
That's correct.
When you can build a family, when you can do these types of things. So from a female perspective, this avoidancy can very much so remove the ability for you to build a family.
Yes, and you have to think about it this way. Every time a woman has sexual intercourse with a man, it scars them. So they're building scars over a period of time.
Why do you think that's different between male and females?
Men are logic and women are emotional. That's what they lead with. And whenever you scar a woman, it's going to scar their emotions. By having multiple partners, this is why I get frustrated with this whole body count. What is body count? I hear this on social media all the time, and women going around pronouncing that I have 36 mates. That is dangerous. That is very, very dangerous. And it's scarring them.
Yeah.
Scarring me.
It's only fueling their insecure attachment, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Men don't get scarred as much from it because we don't thrive off of oxytocin. We thrive off of vesperespin. Vesperespin is your teammate drug, your bonding hormone. And we thrive more off of vesperespin. They thrive more off of oxytocin. In the case of an avoidant, they don't process oxytocin correctly, and that's what causes all their ill feelings and causes them to trigger.
And so we kind of touched on this, and I know you wanted to go into it as well on this episode. When you look at a female, every time they have sexual intercourse, it creates a scar. Mm-hmm. How does birth control play into this? Like because when you have previously, there was such greater consequences to sexual intercourse. Yes. Now it's become almost like a game. Like, how high is your body count? Like that almost is a badge of honor, especially in men. So how do you think the birth control epidemic has affected relationships, especially in this attachment style?
You asked about birth control last time, and I wasn't prepared to have that conversation. I am now. Birth control, I went back and did some more research on it. I already had my philosophies, and they might be considered conspiracy theory, which is fine. I don't mind hate mail. Birth control was actually created in 1957. It became a general public use in 1960. I went back and researched it. What coincides with the creation of hormonal birth control? I truly feel that hormonal birth control is one of the worst drugs we've created on our planet. What happens to coincide with the creation of hormonal birth control and the increased use of it? Loss of testosterone in men. If you look at the graphs, female hormonal birth control, the usage of it has increased and increased to where we're now at about 68% of women are using hormonal birth control. What does hormonal birth control do? It prevents a woman from creating certain hormones during her fertile cycle. There have been many blind studies. The way we are attracted to each other as male and female is instinctual. Hundreds and hundreds of blind studies done this way. Take 10 women and put them in a white t-shirt. Stand them in a line. Take 500 men and ask them to go and smell that t-shirt. At the end of them smelling all 10 t-shirts, you ask them to identify the 3 women that they found most attractive. Overwhelmingly, over 85% of the time, they choose the 3 women that are in their fertile cycle. Mm-hmm. Now you take another blind study. You take the same 10 women, you make them walk away from men. You make those 500 men view them walking away. Ask them again, out of those 10 women, which ones do you find the most attractive? Again, overwhelmingly, over 80% of the time, they choose the 3 women that are in their fertile cycle. We can sense when a woman is fertile. We know when a woman is capable of making a baby. It's instinctual. We're using hormonal birth control to suppress the hormones for their fertile cycle. Well, if they're not creating the hormones that cause them to be fertile, it's probably affecting our testosterone production. And that is my conspiracy theory, that hormonal birth control was used as a sterilization process to a certain extent, and it's causing the depletion of male hormones, male testosterone in particular.
The thing that really opened my eyes to this is one, my wife has been on birth control for multiple years, and she's always had major problems with it because whether it was too low of a like hormone dosage or it was too high. Like you're just this sliding scale. One day, she's like, hey, I'm having trouble at the pharmacy. They're telling me I can't get my script, whatever. They changed her birth control without her consultation. So the actual, like, and I said, give me your last pharmacy script and give me this one. Went in, looked at both of them side by side. Obviously, neither of them were good. But I'm looking at the second one, and it was like the side effects of it were enormous. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, without consultation, you change this person's birth control. And when you understand the ramifications on a female specifically, you're talking mood swings, you're talking all different types of problems that really do affect a relationship. Like I'm very solid on that. So with that, would you say there's a better option or would you just say avoid it altogether?
I would say avoid it altogether. I think our foods that we're putting in our body are a problem. We're putting a lot of foreign chemicals in our body through our foods, which are affecting people. I, again, think hormonal birth control is probably one of the worst drugs we've ever created. We are screwing with Mother Nature. And we are designed to be in relationship as humans. There's no doubt about that. And now we're messing with hormones that cause us to want to be together and are probably causing us not to want to be together. Multiple things occurred after the creation of birth control. Women's liberation, right? Free sex. Women started having more sex. Why? They don't have the fear of pregnancy anymore. That fear was actually a counterbalance to a lot of things. Now they don't have that fear anymore. They can go around and have sex without any recourse to it. And they're not creating the hormones that they should be creating, which is creating an imbalance within their body. I think it's one of the worst drugs that we've ever created.
Going a little deeper down this rabbit hole is what, if any, relation does your attachment style have on drug and alcohol dependency?
You asked that question last time, and I didn't know the answer. You're learning I'm a deep diver, so I went and got it.
Nice.
Very interesting. Insecure attachment styles have about a 70% increase of addiction. Avoidance in particular have a very increased, probably over 80%. They are addicts. They're addicted to dopamine. And that can translate into other things. Alcohol use, they can become sex addicts. Some going down the path of drugs, usually not. They do get very addicted to work. The one thing you'll notice about avoidance, they're extremely hard workers. I've had the privilege recently, because of our last video, to consult more people on relationship. Oddly enough, most of them are avoidance. I'll give an example. Right now, I'm consulting a 46-year-old man that's running a $600 million company. Highly, highly successful. Guy has a routine, gets up at 5 in the morning, does everything the way we think you should probably do it. One challenge, his relationships have been an absolute disaster. And through these consultations with him and several others, I'm learning something. Somewhere between age 40 and age 50, loneliness sets in for an avoidant. They start feeling very, very lonely. They start looking backwards at their history. I've had multiple relationships. None of them have been successful. The whole time, remember, they're rewriting the script. They're always blaming their partner for it. Somewhere between 40 and 50, it sets in that it may not be my partner. It may be me. And loneliness sets in at a high level, and that's when they start searching for answers.
We've talked a lot about identifying, but I feel like the show wouldn't be complete without reform.
Okay.
How can one take a step? Because the thing that you mentioned is with an avoidant attachment style, they base it off their intuition on whether they should get out of a relationship, and they'll almost tell themselves a lie. And if you're talking about successful business people, they 100% rely on their intuition. So how can you tell the intuition of this is right for me? How can you tell it wrong? And then how do you start going into the roots of your attachment style and start to rework it?
Well, we'll stay on the avoidant. The avoidant needs to learn how to lean in. The avoidance natural reaction at all times when they trigger is to run and leave the relationship. Remember, they don't trust anyone but themselves to protect themselves. Their number one concern is always safety. Safety of my emotions, safety of well-being. I can only take care of myself. They only know how to auto-regulate, not co-regulate. An avoidant needs to first have awareness. That's why I'm always about awareness. If they have awareness, then they need to learn how to lean in. And what that looks like is there's about 4 or 5 things they can do. First and foremost, when they feel something is wrong within the relationship, they get that ill feeling. Within 24 to 48 hours, they need to express that to their mate. One of the things that avoidants do is they stuff little things. And if you talk to an avoidant, they all have the same story. I stuff little things, I explode, and then I shut down. That shutdown is that erasing part. They need to lean into it. They should go to their partner when something is bothering them. That is very painful to them. For an avoidant to lose their avoidancy, they're going to feel physical pain, just like withdrawal from drugs. And they need to lean into that. It's going to be a painful experience, but they're going to be heavily rewarded. And studies are showing it only takes 4 to 6 months for an avoidant or an insecure, any insecure, to actually remove their insecure style. The challenge for all insecures is they have to do it within relationship, which is the thing that scares the living crap out of an avoidant most than anything. So when, again, you've heard me say it in the last video, when they want to turn right, they have to learn to turn left. And in exchange for that, their partner has to be very understanding. Let the avoidant tippy toe into the waters. If they start opening up, don't force them to open up more. Vulnerability is the biggest fear, one of the biggest fears of an avoidant. Abandonment is another one, surprisingly, even though their biggest one is lack of independence. If you threaten their independence, they're definitely going to trigger and run.
So can you have more than one attachment style? Because some of the things you've said the first episode have resonated. Some of the things you said today, I was like, oh, that could be me. Like, can you be avoidant and something else?
No. You can transition from one to the other, but you cannot be both at the same time. Well, let me rephrase that. You have your disorganized or fearful avoidant. They have both inside, anxious and, but that is natural. They have both at all times. But you're not going to find a dismissive avoidant all of a sudden become anxious. There's only one situation that happens. Whenever an avoidant triggers, they're going to trigger their partner no matter what their style is. I was in a relationship, we'll use my example. I was in a relationship with an avoidant. When she triggered, I became anxious for about 2 to 3 weeks. If I was an avoidant, I would have only lasted 2 to 3 days. They're both avoidant, they're going to each run the opposite way. But the moment the first avoidant triggers or the avoidant triggers, whatever your style is on the other side, you are going to become anxious. You're going to become the direct opposite of them. That's going to last for a period of time. If the other party is an avoidant, it'll be a very short period, 2 to 3, 4 days. If you're secure like myself, it's going to be a matter of weeks, 2, 3 weeks. Then you're going to recapture your power, as I say. You're going to go back into your natural style. Remember, these are behavioral styles. You're going to flex in and out of them from time to time, but you're always going to return to your natural style. If the avoidant is in a relationship with an anxious, the anxious can trigger for an extended period of time. Those are the ones that will chase you down at your business. Those are the ones that will hunt you down at your house.
Yeah.
They get very angry, and they will chase you down and let you know about it.
So then if someone's watching and they're like, I feel like I have certain qualities from anxious, I feel like I have certain qualities from what you guys are talking about today, how do you sift through that and figure out if you're trying to like diagnose yourself?
Well, first read the book Attached and take the assessment. There's several online assessments. First identifying who you are. I had the great pleasure for the first time to have a conversation with a FA, a fearful avoidant. Very interesting, and she was very honest. I happened to know her for about 15 years. I did not know she was an FA. She watched the video. She went out and bought the book on her own, took the assessment, and contacted me and said, can we talk? I said, what's up? She said, I'm a fearful avoidant. I said, oh, shit. And we had a conversation about that. And she said, why did you say that? And I said, because you're probably the most complicated person to have a relationship with. You're going to push and pull, and I never know which one you're going to do. You're going to be the most confusing person to be in a relationship. Sometimes you're going to be pulling me closer. I need you. I want you. There's that anxious side. And then as soon as I respond to that and I start giving you what you need, you're going to turn into an avoidant on me and start pushing me away. And that's very challenging. So I highly encourage you to look at this, start understanding it, and eventually decide which one you are. You have to rely on one of them, not both of them. Because if you rely on both of them, you're going to be a very confusing person to be in a relationship with.
What attachment style are you?
I'm a secure with anxious tendencies. I think I shared with you last time I had a very unique childhood. From 0 to 5, I was separated from my father at age 1, never knew my father. Then I was separated at age 5 from my mother and my stepfather, who I thought was my father. I was blessed, though, that I was adopted basically by my grandparents. They came and took me from California, and they were both very secure. I was very blessed. So for the next 20 years of my life, I lived in a very secure household with a loving mother and a loving father. They were my grandparents, but they acted like my mother and father. So I'm what they would call a maid secure. You have a natural secure and a maid secure. I'm what they call a maid secure.
I experienced from our first conversation, since then I got married. And it's weird having these conversations because what you said with having to work through it in a relationship, I found whatever style that I had, I think it was more of like, I honestly think I was fearful avoidant, where I had that pull, like push and pull. We came to multiple breaking points over the process of like from engagement to marriage, where I was pretty much pressure tested. It's like, whether it was logistics with the wedding or situations, I was getting these like signs telling this own story in my head. Hey, this isn't right for me. Hey, maybe I'm wrong here. Hey, maybe this is, and it through the leaning in process, I was able to just kind of push on. Then coming to my honeymoon after the wedding, I had the first feeling in my life of this depth that I had not felt before. This depth of I am kind of, you're being in a avoidant, at least how I saw it, I didn't want to feel pain because it felt like I was personally getting abandoned in any situation. But with this specifically, I had a moment during my honeymoon where I looked at my now wife and I was like, oh, I'm stuck, like not stuck in a bad way, but like I am now at the mercy of, I want this person to thrive. I want this person to be healthy, all things that I don't have direct control over. And it was a very scary moment. So kind of tying it all together, when you are in a relationship and you do need to lean in, what are some good practices to just will that forward?
Again, it's going to depend on your attachment style, but sticking on the avoidant, they need to lean into it. They need to identify what's bothering them as best they can. A lot of times they cannot. Even if they cannot identify, they need to approach their partner, like I said, within 24 to 48 hours. Remember, they're stuffers. They're going to stuff it in their subconscious. And they build these little bricks where their wall starts. And once that wall is built, good luck tearing it down. That's why the avoidant needs to be first aware, I'm an avoidant. These are the tendencies I have. Then they need to do the heavy lifting and trust. The challenge with an avoidant is they don't trust anyone but themselves. And they have to learn how to trust someone else. It's very challenging. Remember, for the first 5 years of their life, they didn't feel they could trust their parents. And that was because they were not getting their emotional support the way they desired it. Doesn't mean they had bad parents. What's unique about avoidance, a lot of them come from very wealthy families. And they were with nannies and things of that nature. Both parents worked, both were highly successful. Now they're put with a nanny. The nanny's taking care of them. They go off to boarding school. They have some of the best educations. Remember, they're very hard workers. They achieve at a very high level avoidance. The only place they don't achieve well is within personal relationship. I want to again emphasize avoidance and all of them. They're not bad people. Are there manipulative avoidance? Yes, there are. Are the majority of avoidance bad people? No, they just have a condition that is causing them not to find successful relationship, something they desire more than anything else.
So we had a conversation last week with our pastor, actually, on how possibly feminism has led to the destruction of the order of the household.
100%. I would agree with that 100%.
So do you think that with that and not having someone home, right? Because your father's working and now your mother is also working. That's when you're with the nanny and you're with the babysitter and the after school program and so on. Do you think that has led or will lead to a rise in more avoidant attachments going forward?
Yes, we're already seeing that. The number of secures is shrinking. We're down to about 40% of our population being secure. 30% of our population are avoidance. 5% of them are fearful avoidance, and then remaining 25 are anxious. Those numbers have grown throughout the years. The baby boomer era, I think, is what caused a lot of it. That's when you started to see the double income take place. More and more parents were working. Both parents were working. Now somebody else is raising our kids. They're not getting a good emotional attachment during that process. That's causing them to either form an avoidant personality or an anxious personality. And I don't see that stopping. Think of it as a snowball rolling down a hill. It's still rolling, and it's getting bigger and bigger. The number of secures is shrinking on the planet. Can an avoidant or an anxious become a secure? Yes. The only way they can do so is within relationship. And you can put an avoidant and an anxious together, and they can find a way to become secure. They have to communicate openly and honestly with each other. The challenge with an avoidant is they don't know how to do that. It makes them very uncomfortable. It is painful for them to be vulnerable. They will experience physical pain, and they will run from it. And that is where an avoidant has to change direction and lean into that. And they're going to have to experience that pain to get past it. If they do, they're going to be heavily rewarded.
My last question for you is, on a quick analysis, what would you say Jamie's attachment style is?
Being appropriate for me to do that, we've got to do an assessment on him. I pride myself on being a professional in both of my arenas, and to guess on somebody's profile would be inappropriate.
So what I want to know, especially with where do you get the energy with this aspect of mindset coaching? Because I think people that are hearing this podcast that need somebody to lean into, I think you're the perfect person. We've spent a lot of time with you recently, and I mean, your way that you look at things and your diligence to both yourself, how you're improving, but then other people, you're very giving person, like really, really awesome. Like, and we're super appreciative of that. But people that are looking for your mentorship, what type of person would you want to work with?
I like working with them all. First of all, thank you for the compliment. Second of all, let me discuss my why. The reason I really want to do this, the children. We are screwing our children up. The snowball is rolling down the hill. We're producing more and more insecure attachment styles. I have 4 children. They have to live long past me. I'm older. I'm in the dating world. I don't really have challenges with dating. It's the youth. Look at the numbers, right? 64% of young men under 30 are not currently active in the dating world. What's interesting about that is only 32% of the same age group women are not actively. Well, where is that other 30% or so? Who are they dating, those women? Then you look at the age gap in that dating scene. It's only 2 years apart. Okay, so they're not dating up in age. Who are they dating? There's only 2 answers. They're either dating themselves, women are dating women, or they're dating the same guy. And that's usually what's happening. You have alpha males, right? You're probably familiar with alpha, beta, sigma. Alpha males are particularly known for having multiple mates. People forget when we were created, the cavemen, it was 8 to 1, 8 women to every male. Rape, I hate to say it, was the way we had sex. Men would go from village to village and impregnate, spread their seed. That was natural at that point in time. Towards the end of the caveman era, now we got to 60% women and 40% men. That is when monogamy was created. And naturally, we started becoming monogamistic. And we started having children. That's when the hunter-gatherer started taking place. I'm going to be the hunter, she's going to be the gatherer. We defined monogamy in the caveman days. That is evolution over time. We have continued to grow that. I think birth control is the death of it, and that we're starting to go in the opposite direction.
But then that's my question. Do you think that this is a part of the natural evolution? Do you think we're going?
I hope not, because you're going to see a increase in male violence against women as this go on. There's certain things that are very interesting. Look at the suicide rate in young men under the age of 30, drastically high. There's another category that's very high. Divorced men in their 50s. Think about it. A man marries young in my group, right? We got married in the 80s and 90s. If you weren't married by the time you were 30, there was something wrong with you. Nowadays, it's natural not to be married until after the age of 30. Now you get married, you start building a family with this woman, and what happens? They wake up when the kids are grown. They're now 18 years old. The woman says, I'm not in love anymore, right? What is it currently now? I heard about 80% of all divorce is filed by women. It's ever increasing. It used to be 70 something, and now it's approaching 80%. Women are exiting long-term relationships left and right now. Well, here's a man standing in his 50s. He just built his entire life, and it all got pulled out from underneath him. When the woman leaves, what does she want? She wants half. She wants the kids. And some of them will even try to bar you from seeing your kids. Men are not wired that way. We've now built our whole environment. You're seeing a massive increase in suicide rates in men in their 50s as well, because everything they've built has now been taken away from them. So I don't think it's a good, it may be part of the evolution. We're going to become a relationship or loveless society, and it's going to become very transactional, and you're going to see a lot of situationships if that happens.
But I mean, tin hat on for a second. I think when you look at where we're going with like the rise of pornography, now we're getting into like haptic feedback suits. You know what I mean? I think we're going to get to a point here where guys are going to just stop the whole idea of like, oh, do I have to go through all this pain of trying to find a woman, or can I just spend a couple grand to get a sex bot? And now all of a sudden life is simple. What do you think some of the ramifications of that are?
The verdict's still out on that. There was actually a report released recently that says pornography is good because it's allowing young men to release their stresses. Remember, we are designed to have physical contact. It's proven medically that you will live, if you enter into a deep, long-lasting relationship, you're going to live longer than somebody that is not. That is just how it is. We're going to create hormones that we weren't creating. Remember, there's co-regulation that takes place. There's a reason why we're designed to be in a relationship. We give each other something we need or something we want. So I do anticipate more violence against women, which is sad to say, if we don't start changing the direction of the way relationships are going. And the study recently said they feel that pornography may be a good thing. It's allowing young men to release and tampering down their violent side. When you take a young man and prevent him from having sex, he's going to become violent. It's just a matter of time.
Damn.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I think,
go back to the 1950s, right? When we had our baby boom. What caused that? Young men went to war. What happens when you're in war? You generate a ton of testosterone, right? You guys work out. What happens when you work out? You generate testosterone. That fear of war, that participation in war caused a large increase in testosterone levels. They came back. What happened? We had the baby boom. Everyone was mating at that point in time. Women were lonely because their men were gone, and men came back and they were full of testosterone. Now we had tons of babies. We've now shrank all of that over a period of time. Between the lowering of men's testosterone and the increased use of hormonal birth control by women, we're kind of screwing with Mother Nature right now, and we need to address that.
And I think you like what's the quote? It's like hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men, and so the cycle goes.
And that is the exact cycle.
That's what we're in right now.
And right now we're weak men.
Yeah,
is what's happening. Men are weak right now. Women are demasculating men.
Yeah,
right? The feminine movement.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm totally about the Me Too movement, but I think it's evolved into something that is not good.
Because I think it's like anything, there is serious injustice.
Correct.
With women that participated like in the Me Too movement, like the stuff with Hollywood and all that, that's real. Like that, like you had to do a lot of things as a woman that you wouldn't have had to do if you were a man. With that being said, though, I think like anything, something that it starts as an injustice now is a weapon for evil to start using as a reason why men are bad and men need, their like if you were tin hat on to try to undermine, men, you would empower women, make them feel like they are complete without a man. You would screw with the testosterone in men. You would screw with the hormones in women. Hence,
you're going back to my conspiracy theory.
That's genuinely what I see, though. That's real.
I don't disagree with you. And there may be a third party, an individual or multiple individuals that wanted this to occur. If you want to take down an empire, what's the best way to do it? Separate the men and women.
Yeah.
Cause confusion amongst them. And that's what we're seeing now. I mean, we're over 50% divorce rate, just over. First marriages, I think, are floating around 40% divorce rate. They've actually decreased a little bit. That's because we're seeing less and less marriages.
Yeah.
Second marriages are floating in the high 50 percentile for failure. And then third marriages are approaching 80% for failure.
Yeah.
Now, part of the reason that's happening is because of avoidance. Avoidance are exiting relationships, entering into new ones, divorcing again, and
Skewing the data.
just continuing the cycle over and over again. So they skew the data a little bit. I've been looking for correlations between individual profiles and attachment styles. I have not been able to locate one. The numbers are not there yet. Using myself as a high D, 10% of the planet are high D personalities. I'm a secure. I'm part of a 40% of the crowd. The numbers don't match up. So I haven't been able to find a correlation yet. But yes, I think that there's a epidemic happening in our country right now, the silent one that we're not talking about, just starting to. When you have people like Tony Robbins and Joe and all these people starting to discuss it, the awareness is being built. But I'll go back to my goal. Awareness without action is useless. And this is where we don't need we need to stop being a reactive society. That's psychology. I identified I have a problem. Now I'm going to go talk to a doctor. We need to address this more proactively as a society, and people need to start discussing it. Those friends of avoidance, if they knew the original love story, I'll use my situation. If her friends knew the love story of the first phase of our relationship, and then all of a sudden heard a completely different story, don't become an enabler of that person. You go to that person and say something is not right because you told me for a year you were madly in love with this person. Now all of a sudden you don't like them anymore. You need to go back to that relationship and find out what is wrong, especially if they know how they disengage from that relationship. Instead of becoming the enabler and believing the lie story that they create, the fabricated story. Those are some of the things we can do as a society to start improving this. Avoidance in particular need to lean into their avoidancy. Start doing the heavy lifting, build awareness, and then lean into it. It's going to be painful, but they're going to be heavily rewarded at the end of it. They're going to get what they truly desire.
It's incredible.
Thank you for coming up. Oh,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, how can people get involved if they heard they heard this podcast, they want to get involved with you, they want to start working through some of these inner workings that we mentioned on the podcast? How can people connect with you?
Well, that's very simple. I'm in real estate for 33 years, as you know. I am in the public eye. All you have to do is Google my name and you'll find me. My phone number is plastered anywhere. Because of my industry, I can't hide. It's one of my passions. I love helping people. So I'm dedicating about 20% of my time in my life right now to helping people. When I do go back in relationship, I'll probably pull back from that a little bit because there's only so much time in a day.
Sure.
Right now I'm single, so I have some time. I am dating, having a lot of fun doing it. And I want to help change people's lives. Again, I'll go back to my why, the kids. We got to stop screwing up our children. I have 4 children, and they're going to have to live in this environment for a very long time. And I'm very blessed. Both of my daughters are in long relationships. They fell in love with their high school sweetheart. One of them is married for almost 10 years to her high school sweetheart, and the other one's about to be. I have my little one. It's yet to be determined what he's going to do.
Well, thank you for coming on. We always learn
Always
so
a
much
pleasure, guys.
when
I
you
hope we
come.
get a chance to do it again because there's so much of this to talk about.
Yeah.
We've only covered one of the insecurities.
If you do like this segment of POG, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. That's how we know to keep doing it. What would be our next segment?
Getting into the anxious, they're the second largest. I think they're the most easily to cure their condition because all they have to learn to do is trust one person themselves, where an avoidant has to learn to trust many. That's much harder to do.
Well, we'll see you next time for Anxious.
I love it.